guys, welcome back. We left off in our last video in the French Baroque, and we are going to pick up today looking at some more French art from a later period in European history known as Rococo. So this style of art comes into vogue around the year after Louis XIV passes away. So French art is going to shift, or the center of French art is going to shift from the Palace of Versailles to the nobility kind of really moving back to their palatial townhomes in the center of Paris. And that's where this style will come from. So France is still the center of the art world overall in Europe. It has not left yet, and it will pretty much, the art world will stay focused in France up until about World War II. So we are actually also now in our very final unit before the AP exam. This is Later Europe, it's called Later Europe and America from 1750 really up until the year 1980. So that's what we're going to be covering over the next week and a half as we go through these videos. So when we left off with Baroque, that was really focused on the Palace of Versailles, the grandeur of the king, the propaganda the art being used as propaganda to show the king's wealth. And in our new style of Rococo, we're going to see the shift in what the style of this art really looks like and what the meaning is and what the characteristics are. So it will be a shift. All right. So in your notes, again, you want to continue to copy down anything that I have written here in red. This PowerPoint is going to go through Rococo, Neoclassicism, and Romanticism. And I have images down below of these styles seen in all three of those eras of art history. All right. So before we get into the actual art, we always like to talk about, well, what is the context and the background of this era of Rococo? So again, it originates in France with the Royal Academy. The Royal Academy of France really is just the art school that will dictate what is considered high taste in European art throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. So the French Royal Academy will play a really large role in what is considered the epitome of high art. And the word Rococo derives its name from a combination of the French roquet, meaning pebble or shell, and barocco, meaning baroque. So we're going to talk about kind of really what that actually means in a few minutes. So I like to think of it as Baroque on steroids is really what Rococo is. And one of the other key characteristics is we're shifting away from showing the images of the king to now really showing the frivolous existence of the nobility and how they're going to use art to kind of show their self-indulgence, the types of lives that they will live. Lives of drinking and eating and power and clothing and all of these frivolous things that they will spend their money on because they are members of that nobility and members of that upper echelon in French society. And again, the power shifts to the royal court, to the aristocracy, and that is where we get that name from the Baroque to the Rococo. So when the power in France shifts from being showing the power of the king to the power of the nobility, that is where we see the change in art from Baroque to Rococo in France. And again, the shift is away from the royal court of Versailles to the Parisian aristocracy and their homes. The artists who are unable to make a living unless the Royal Academy supported them in France. So you had to kind of be approved by the Royal Academy in order to be seen as an artist in good standing and an artist that would actually be able to get commissions. Women were not able to apply, and only a few were actually admitted. And it didn't matter the talent that you have. And we actually will take a look at one woman who was allowed to enter the Academy. So, what are some characteristics of the Rococo style? First off, the mood is playful, superficial, it's frivolous, and usually very erotic. The style is light, graceful, delicate. The colors, I like to think of it as Easter colors, which are pastels like pinks, greens, blues, whites, silvers, and gold. And again, when we look at some of the images, you're going to see why I call it Baroque on steroids. The architecture of the Baroque is very ornate, very extensive. Decoration is applied to a lot of interiors in the Rococo setting. It is an extreme version of Baroque. And if you think of in art history, where else have we seen an ornate and extensive use of architecture before? What would you say is the one period in European history where we see the most ornate architecture, the most decorative? Think about that for a second. And that's also kind of a precursor to the Rococo style. So Baroque and this other era will kind of be the inspiration for the Rococo style. So think about it. What other style that we've looked at? That would be Gothic, okay? So the Gothic architecture, all this intricate detail and almost over-the-top quality, that is where the Rococo will kind of derive its origins from, that and the drama of the Baroque style. So that's what influences it. So our first artist that we're going to take a look at is a artist named Jean-Honore Fragonard. If you've ever seen the movie Frozen, you will have definitely seen this piece, and I'm pretty sure we talked about this piece in the beginning of the school year. So he becomes pretty famous. He is a member of the Royal Academy, but he is going to be known really almost as the father of Rococo art. He's going to die essentially poor and forgotten because he didn't evolve with the artistic times. He continues to paint in the Rococo style even after Rococo is out of style, and that will cause him to essentially to die penniless. And he doesn't evolve into the new neoclassical style of the French Revolution. So this is the piece that you want to know for the Rococo style. There's two of them from France. So this story was created because Fragonard had gotten a letter in the mail from a gentleman asking him, a gentleman named Baron St. Julien, and he wanted a painting created that he described, and he wanted it to look like this. I want you to paint the Madame on a swing kept in motion by a bishop. Put me in it where I can see the legs of this pretty girl, or even closer if you want to make the picture even more pleasing. And that is what Fragonard has created here. So what you have here is this young girl kicking her shoe off. We have in the lower, it's kind of a strong diagonal kind of quality here. We have the patron looking up the dress of his mistress. This painting was meant to hang in his office in the center of Paris while his wife was living in the outside countryside of Paris. And we have some Rococo qualities, kind of this frivolousness. Like, who needs a painting that's just this decorative of their mistress? It's showing just how selfish and self-serving the nobility of France are. Now, if you kind of know your European history, this selfishness and self-servingness of the nobility is what will eventually lead to the French Revolution. They're so self-absorbed with their own lives, they don't see the poverty of the average everyday French citizen and how they're living. So we have those pastel colors. It's almost like this secret garden. The bishop is behind here, kind of pushing this girl back and forth in the swing. Shoes coming off, hopefully leading to some type of sexual encounter. We have Cupid over here with the finger to his lips, showing that this is a a secret moment that's meant to be kept hush hush from anyone else because the man is married and this is his mistress. So you do want to write down what I had here in the red. The unsuspecting bishop swings her from behind. He doesn't really know what's happening. He just thinks he's like pushing this girl, but really, he's moving her towards this endeavor with this nobleman down below. So now on to our next artist, a lady and one of our first female artists, since we haven't talked about too many. This is Elisabeth Vigee-Le. She actually becomes the creator and the court painter of Marie Antoinette. She will paint over 660 paintings and 25 portraits of Marie Antoinette. And she will travel throughout Europe. She will have a relatively long painting life. And she has early success. She actually, marries relatively poorly. And she becomes an émergée during the French Revolution, which means she essentially flees France. She's a member of the nobility. A lot of nobility were scared in the French Revolution, as the French Revolution goes on, that they were going to be imprisoned by the Third Estate. So she will leave, and she will travel the rest of Europe, painting portraits for various heads of state in the rest of Europe. So because she's a woman, she will usually portray female heads of state, queens, and also families of royalty. So here we have a self-portrait portrait that is really kind of what you would think of as a resume, a piece of her resume. Like, this is what I'm able to do. This is how I can paint. These are the qualities that I can bring to a canvas. So she's got those light qualities. She's got that kind of over-the-top hat on and very, very decorative clothing. Those are the Rococo qualities that are seen here. Now, this is the painting that you do have to know. So this is one of 40 self-portraits that exist. They are all highly idealized. Okay, she's portrayed here relatively young. She's looking out at the viewer. She paints a portrait of Marie Antoinette onto that canvas, who is rendered from memory because she was killed during the French Revolution. This painting is after, obviously, the French Revolution already began. And she looks, and the Marie Antoinette kind of looks admiringly upon the painter. We see her there with all of her paintbrushes, her paint palette, and it was kind of inspired also by the portraits of Peter Paul Rubens. And we see some Rococo qualities here through the touch of the coloring in her face, that very, very light coloring. That's really what would place this in the Rococo era, even though technically it's kind of past the time period when Rococo was in vogue. Here she is painting the royal family of France. That's Marie Antoinette, the 3 children Marie Antoinette has, and then we have her one son that would have been Louis the 19th. He is kind of opening up the little bassinet there because their youngest child had just died. So Rococo art isn't just restricted to France. It also is seen in England at the end of the 18th century, except it has a couple of differences in terms of the qualities that it shares. So in England in the end of the 1700s, painting of common people is going to be prevalent because of the Enlightenment and the writings of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So we're going to be shifting away from, again, just like in France, of images of the royalty and shifting towards not just nobility, but of everyday people in England. So that's the real difference. It's a shift not to the nobility, but to everyday people. And if you think of the Enlightenment, that is when philosophers are trying to figure out and solve the society's problems of government, economics, and trying to use the principles of the scientific revolution to solve the issues that they are seeing in society. So that's what the Enlightenment was. And we're going to see some of that reflected in the art. So this is also a time period of the ramping up of the Industrial Revolution. We're going to see how that really affects the art of England in this time. And we'll also see that in a couple of the other eras that are coming, like Romanticism, how Industrial Revolution affects that. So what do you guys have to know? So this painting it's not in the note packet, so you do want to write down the name of the painting. You want to write down the artist. It's one of the images that you do have to know in the Art History 250. This is a painting by Joseph Wright of Derby, and it's called A Philosopher Giving a Lecture at the Orrery. Now, essentially, though, this is a painting that looks like it's Baroque, but it is not. And it's not Baroque because of the subject matter that is being shown inside. So it is influenced by a meeting of a provincial group of intellectuals in England called the Lunar Society that met once a month to discuss current scientific discoveries and developments. And what you have there is an orrery. And an orrery is an early form of a planetarium. I mean, it's imitating the motions of the solar system. That's what all of those circular bands are meant to represent. And what we see here in the image, though, is a mixed group of middle-class people who are in attendance. We've got children, we've got women, we've got older men, we've got educated people, all essentially learning and interested in science, okay? And that's kind of an aspect of the Enlightenment. We have some curious, some contemplate, some in wonder, some are fascinated that are viewing this. The Philosopher is loosely based on a portrait by Sir Isaac Newton. He is demonstrating here what an eclipse would be, and we have the man that looks like Sir Isaac Newton there kind of in the center. Have it a little bit larger there, but it does kind of look like it's an Italian Baroque painting, but it's not because of the subject matter. The idea that it's being influenced by the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment, and the mixture here of people of all various social classes. It's also not religious, which is why it's not the Italian Baroque period. And then our final piece that we're going to look at, which is also from the the English Rococo era. It's called Breakfasting from Marriage a la Mode by William Hogarth. Now, William Hogarth essentially is what you would think of as the inventor of almost the comic strip, because these were meant to be satirical images, and this is just one of one of a series of, six paintings which chronicle the marital kind of immortalities of the wealthy. So it's satire of the wealthy. And it's usually done in a series to explain the story completely and then printed for the mass public in newspapers. So what you have here is this wealthy family whose life really is in shambles. Husband is having an affair. The little dog is kind of sniffing the garment of another woman that he was with the night before. His wife has been gambling and was having parties the entire night before. The house is in disarray. Their accountant has come with all of their bills to talk about where they are financially. The family is in no way able to have that discussion at this time, so he's kind of walking out disgusted because this family is essentially wasting away their money and probably will not be successful for much longer as he walks away disgusted. So it's a highly satiric painting about the aristocratic English society and those who would like to buy their way into it. So it's a narrative painting. It's later turned again into a series. And if we think of like comic strips, it would look something like this. And there would have been the other six paintings to go along with it. All right, so that's it for French Baroque and English Baroque. Our next video is going to be all about the Neoclassic era and how it was affected by the French Revolution.